The Sri Lankan Civil War was a devastating conflict that lasted from 1983 to 2009, leaving deep scars on the nation's social and political landscape. The war was fought between the Sri Lankan government, predominantly controlled by the Sinhalese ethnic majority, and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTTE, a militant group seeking an independent Tamil state. While mainstream narratives often frame the war as an ethnic struggle, a post-colonial analysis reveals that its roots lie in the enduring effects of British imperialism and the struggle for power and dignity among Sri Lanka's ethnic groups. The British administration favored the Tamil minority, granting them superior educational and professional opportunities. This preferential treatment was largely due to the British tendency to employ Tamil elites in civil service roles, as well as the Tamil diaspora's widespread commercial networks in other British colonies, including India and Singapore. As a result, Tamils gained disproportionate influence in the colonial administration, creating a perception of economic and political dominance that fueled resentment among the Sinhalese majority. Following Sri Lanka's independence from Britain in 1948, the power dynamics shifted dramatically. Sinhalese politicians sought to reclaim national identity and reverse the perceived Tamil advantage. This led to a series of policies that marginalized the Tamil population and heightened tensions between the two communities. One of the earliest and most controversial acts of discrimination against Tamils was the Sinhala-Only Act of 1956, which established Sinhala as the sole official language of Sri Lanka. This law effectively barred Tamils from many government jobs and limited their access to public services, further deepening ethnic divides. Another policy that exacerbated tensions was the educational standardization policy of the 1970s. This policy aimed to increase Sinhalese representation in higher education by requiring Tamil students to score higher than their Sinhalese counterparts to gain university admission. While framed as an effort to correct historical imbalances, it was perceived as a direct attack on Tamil aspirations, as education had been one of the few avenues for social mobility available to them. These policies, among others, gradually alienated the Tamil population, leading to increasing demands for an independent Tamil state. By the late 1970s, Tamil political grievances had transformed into a militant separatist movement. In response to the systemic discrimination against Tamils, several Tamil militant groups emerged, with the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTTE, becoming the most dominant. Founded by Velupillai Prabhakaran, the LTTE sought to establish an independent Tamil state, Tamil Eelam, in the northern and eastern regions of Sri Lanka. The LTTE was known for its military effectiveness and ruthless tactics, including the use of suicide bombers, assassinations, and guerrilla warfare. They were responsible for high-profile assassinations, including those of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Sri Lankan President Ranasinghe Premadasa. The group also pioneered the use of female suicide bombers, introducing a new dimension to global terrorism tactics. The war officially erupted in July 1983, following the killing of 13 Sri Lankan soldiers by the LTTE, which triggered anti-Tamil riots in Colombo known as Black July. The violence resulted in the deaths of thousands of Tamils and the displacement of many more, marking the beginning of full-scale civil war. The conflict was characterized by extreme violence and human rights violations on both sides. The LTTE was responsible for suicide bombings, forced child recruitment, and ethnic cleansing in areas under its control. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan government engaged in torture and forced disappearances and mass killings of Tamil civilians. Despite intermittent peace talks, including the Norwegian-brokered ceasefire in 2002, the war continued. International intervention remained limited, with India briefly sending peacekeeping forces in 1987, only to withdraw after facing fierce LTTE resistance. India played a complex role in the Sri Lankan Civil War, oscillating between support for Tamil militants and cooperation with the Sri Lankan government. Initially, India provided training, arms, and logistical support to Tamil militant groups, including the LTTE, as a means to exert regional influence and counterbalance Sri Lanka's growing ties with Western and regional powers like Pakistan and China. However, as LTT's extremism grew and their demand for Tamil Eelam became non-negotiable, India recalibrated its approach. In 1987, under pressure from Tamil political factions in Tamil Nadu, the Indian government intervened by deploying the Indian Peacekeeping Force, IPKF, as part of the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. This intervention aimed to disarm the LTTE while granting Tamils limited autonomy. However, the IPKF soon found itself entangled in a brutal conflict with the LTTE, leading to heavy casualties on both sides. Eventually, India withdrew its forces in 1990, having failed to achieve its objectives. The fallout from this intervention culminated in the assassination of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in 1991 by an LTTE suicide bomber, significantly altering India's stance toward the LTTE. Subsequently, India banned the LTTE and distanced itself from direct involvement in Sri Lanka's internal affairs, though Tamil Nadu continued to exert political pressure in favor of Tamil rights. By 2005, Sri Lanka's newly elected president, Mahinda Rajapaksa, took a hardline stance against the LTTE, launching a massive military offensive. By 2009, government forces had encircled the LTE in the northeastern region, leading to a brutal final battle in May 2009. The Sri Lankan military killed LTTE leader Velupillai Prabhakaran, effectively ending the war. However, the final months were marred by allegations of war crimes, with reports indicating that thousands of Tamil civilians were killed in indiscriminate bombings and executions. Despite the war's official conclusion, Sri Lanka has struggled with reconciliation and accountability. The government has been accused of continuing to disenfranchise Tamils through policies such as Sinhalesation, which involves renaming Tamil villages, replacing Tamil monuments with Buddhist sites, and increasing military occupation in Tamil-majority areas. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content on world conflicts, politics, and untold history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.